All right, welcome to this first class, class number 1 of the 4 most important marketing strategies as a coach. I got my trusty chalkboard here because we're going to go to foundations. We're going to talk about our roots. We're going to go back into the Wayback Machine, right? And really talk about what's critical from a marketing standpoint and a strategic standpoint to be in business. Now, you should have gotten an email with handouts. So if you didn't get that, just pop a line in the chat box. Michelle just typed in the link. You should be able to link to it right away. And if you're watching this on video, then we'll put the link somewhere around here. So we're going to loosely go by that handout. If I follow that handout exactly, then it'll be the first time in the history of my life that I ever followed a handout. So let me start by briefly telling you a little bit about myself. I've been coaching and training. Hey, Tony, I see you showed up for almost 15 years now. And I backed into the coaching industry, which is very common for a lot of people. There aren't a whole lot of people that come out of business school and say, I want to create a business, but what product should I use? Oh, I should use coaching as a product. And the reason that's important is that most people don't come into the coaching world with a business mindset or a business strategy or even a business plan. It's like a different muscle than what most of us are being driven by. Most of us are being driven by just the desire to change people's lives or the desire to share what we've learned along the way. So I backed into the business of personal development because of my own experience in personal development. I was going to seminar after seminar after seminar. I got addicted to finding out more about myself. The more I went inward, I started to connect all kinds of dots, and the more I wanted to continue learning about myself. And I ended up going to about 10 seminars over the course of, I'd say, 6 to 8 months. And finally, something just clicked, and I decided I want to do this. I want to help people experience some of the things that I'm now experiencing. And I know several of you that I'm familiar with have the exact same story. And the reason that's important is because if we don't have a business framework and a business mind and a business plan, then it can be very difficult to build a business around this work. And this work is sacred to us. So I started in my business 2006, and nothing happened for a long, long time. And then finally, we hit what I call the clicking point. And from early 2007 till the end of 2007, we made almost $300,000. And so if we back up about 6 months into 2006, over an 18-month period of time, we made over $300,000. But prior to that, man, I was trying so many things and they just weren't clicking. And I was going everywhere that I possibly could and trying everything that I thought that I needed to try, following a bunch of different people and so forth. And finally, it worked. And then we had this massive success. At the end of 2007, I decided I wanted to make a hell of a lot of money. I decided I wanted to make $1 million. And so I changed everything. I changed our product, our branding, our target market, what we were offering, our pricing, our whole business model. I changed everything because I saw somebody that was doing multi-millions of dollars in the business of personal development and live events and so forth. And so I just wanted to follow his model. So I scrapped everything that worked, that generated all this money, and I followed his plan. And over the course of some very, very painful early months of 2008, where I ended up canceling a bunch of events that we had planned and just, got our butts handed to us financially, I was in a world of hurt in 2008. And over the next 12 months, I couldn't figure out why it wasn't working. It was working for everybody else. I tried to follow their plan and it wasn't working for me. And then in 2009, I ended up deciding to file bankruptcy. I just couldn't handle the pressure. I carried a lot of debt into this business from past business ventures, which wasn't fair to this business, but it was just the case. And so we ended up filing bankruptcy because I couldn't figure out a way out of this. And that moment in time and that moment lasted many, many months, caused me to ask myself questions that I hadn't asked myself before, really about who I was as a person, as a man, as a provider. I had a family, a mortgage, car, mid-30s, and I didn't have any money at one point to buy Carl's Jr. for my family. And it caused me to really dive into my own self. And even though it wasn't fun, it wasn't enjoyable, it was the most valuable experience that I had in this industry, because it caused me to go internal, figure out not what I could be doing or should be doing, but figure out what I want to be doing. And then sort of relaunch my business from a place of passion instead of a place of shoulds and ego and intellect and other people's strategies. So after we kind of righted the ship over the next several months to a year, then our business was stable. And I tell you that story because my philosophies mostly come from the incredible highs of making multiple six figures in a very short period of time, but then the painful lows falling from that cliff. That's where I learned most of my value in this industry. And that's where so many of these philosophies come from. So I just wanted you to understand what my backstory is, so that you also understand why I'm different in terms of a lot of the philosophies that I teach, and why I believe so strongly in what I've experienced and what I teach and what I see in the market. So that's the short version of my story. If you want the long version of my story, that's on our website, and we'll send it to you there. Or Michelle, if you wouldn't mind linking to the About Me. So if any of you want to read a little bit more, I've actually got a podcast episode on it as well. So if you want more about my story, then you can get to it. So let's talk about today's society, right? This piece of the handout here. We are hyper distracted. We are hyper disconnected, and we are hyper overwhelmed in our society nowadays. That's just my assessment based on where we are with social media and where we are with the internet. And we have all of this technological connection. We have connection to anything, any piece of information we can bring to us. We can order food, we can order cars, we can order taxis. Like, everything is now in this information age of I'm in control and I can bring everything to me. So while we are technologically connected to a lot of information, what's happening is we're being disconnected from ourselves, right? We have these smartphones and these devices and tablets and laptops where if we're ever bored or if we're ever feeling something uncomfortable, we can take a piece of technology and try to numb that discomfort out or misdirect our attention to something that's less uncomfortable for us. And so what it's causing us, in my assessment, my opinion, is that it's pulling us away from our true source of our humanity, from our true source of our courage, of our strength, of our confidence. And so we have this world where I think we're almost being tricked into thinking that we're really connected, but in reality, we are more disconnected than I think we've ever been, but we don't realize that we're so disconnected, which is a dangerous recipe when we actually think we're more connected than we are. So my assertion is that trauma is at an all-time high, and because of that, trust is at an all-time low. So if we are in an ever-increasing traumatized society and an ever-decreasing trusting society, how do we deal with that? We've got people that are going in different directions. And so as we are connected with more and more of the media and more of the technology, we're also being connected with more and more of our trauma. And then what's happening is a lot of people are going to the personal development world. I just had this conversation with Tony a few days ago. They're going to the personal development world with the expectation that this industry, these gurus, can help me in my life, can help heal my traumas, can help me achieve whatever goals I have. And people are buying the expectations of some kind of outcome. And the challenge is that there's no governing body in this industry. There's no legislation in this industry. So people can say whatever they want, and there's nobody to say, hey man, you can't actually sell that thing, right? Because there's no body that says, no governing body that says, these are the rules. And you can't lie to people. And you can't charge this amount of money and deliver this amount of service. Now, I'm not saying that's what's happening all over the industry, but most people have been taken advantage of in some way on the internet, whether it's in the personal development industry or somewhere else. And every time a human gets taken advantage of, they start to guard up a little bit more. They armor up a little bit more. And so we have a society now that is so engaged in technology to the point that pretty much everybody has been traumatized, or everybody has been taken advantage of, or everybody has bought an expectation that didn't get delivered. So we live in a world where people are guarded. That's why I say trust is at an all-time low. This is really critical for us to understand, because these are the humans. Number one, that's how most of us are experiencing this whole world. But number two, these are the humans that are our potential clients and potential customers. So if they are over-traumatized and under-trusting, we need to meet them where they are, give them a different experience so that they'll actually pay attention to us. And if we just jump into the world of online marketing, and online marketing is where most of their trauma and most of their under-delivered expectations have lived, then everybody in online marketing is now dangerous. That's how the human spirit protects itself. So this is where we are as a society. Let me lubricate it a little bit. So how does this play into marketing? Or if we isolate the actual issue here, what's happening is that most marketers are selling shortcuts. And the reason most marketers are selling shortcuts is because most people are buying shortcuts, right? It's a simple supply and demand. If we stopped buying, they would stop offering. And the reason, because marketers are brilliant. I don't have anything negative to say about marketers. I want that to be really clear. I just want to paint two different distinctions here. So what marketers tend to do is they offer what people buy. We are buying shortcuts because our brains are hardwired. That's the third bullet here. Our brains are hardwired to be tempted by shortcuts. The reason our brains are hardwired to be tempted by shortcuts is because our brains are designed to conserve energy. That's one of the things that our brains want to do, just in case we have to run from our lives, or for our lives rather, from some primal danger. Our brains want to conserve as much energy as we possibly can. So if there's an opportunity to get where we want to go with less effort, with less investment, with less work, with less time, with less energy, then our brains go, yeah, I want that thing. So our brains are actually hardwired at the biological level to seek shortcuts. That's why it's so easy for us to buy shortcuts. And that's why it's so smart for marketers to sell shortcuts. They're selling to a primal desire that we have. The problem with that is I've never known a shortcut to work, ever. Now, there are ways as we become more and more evolved in our societies that we find better ways to succeed, but I wouldn't call those shortcuts. I would say those are polishing of the foundational principles. What I'm talking about are shortcuts that say, I'm going to help you hop over the obstacles. I'm going to help you get to where you want to go without doing the required work. I'm going to help you lose a bunch of weight without changing your diet or going to the gym. In fact, you can eat more and lose all this weight with this shortcut, with this pill, with this machine that will freeze off the fat. That's not foundational. And in the health world, a lot of people are becoming extremely unhealthy, but losing weight in the process. And that's actually more dangerous than trying something that doesn't work. So we're in a lose-lose scenario when we're chasing shortcuts. And that message is for each one of us individually, but also for us to understand this is the society that we're dealing with. We're dealing with people that are wanting these shortcuts. So we're moving from this information age, which I think is creating all of these challenges, to what I'm going to say is the transformation age. And the reason that this is really important to understand is that people need to experience some kind of transformation for them to trust us. Maybe we can put that up there. Transformation equals trust. If we can give people an experience that they can't deny in their bodies, then it's easier for them to trust going with the next step, right? It's easy for them to want more of what they just experienced. What most people are being sold is an expectation. And so if I buy your expectation and the expectation isn't met, chances are I'm not going to want to buy another expectation. But people can't argue with experiences. So if you give people an experience and they go, oh my goodness, I just felt something that I never felt before, or the thing that I've been feeling for a long time is now gone, or the connection that I have with this person feels different than anybody else I've ever had before, that's an experience. That's a transformation. And that cuts through the armor. That cuts through the lack of trust. Now, that doesn't always mean that everybody who has an experience is going to purchase, because some people get freaked out by those experiences, right? So I'm not saying that there's a way to make sure that everybody who feels something is going to say yes to your program or your webinar or hire you as a coach. They might experience something through you and be afraid of that experience, and they might go elsewhere. But the people that you're looking for need that experience. And I'm going to change what I just said. The people that are looking for you need that experience to cut through what they have endured in this whole marketing world. Is this landing for you guys? I want to give you some context before we get into a lot of this other strategic information, because without the context, the strategy has no foundation to stand upon. So the last bullet here on page 1 is the way to cut through all of this overwhelm and the hyper disconnection and the hyper distraction is with simplicity, foundational simplicity. That's what we need to touch, deliver, teach, share, and embody for ourselves as teachers, as coaches. Because as coaches, we're leaders. We're telling people, I can help you achieve something in your life. That is a leadership statement. I can lead you somewhere. So for leaders, we have to cut through all that stuff with simplicity. Now, and I would love to know where you all are in the journey of becoming a coach. So if you're brand new, if you're just thinking about it, let me know. If you already have a few clients, let me know. If you've got an established coaching business and you want to scale it up, let me know. I just want to really be able to tell who's in the course here, in the class. So then when it comes to marketing, when it comes to building a business, what most of us are doing is we're looking at what's visible, right? We're looking at the people that have gigantic YouTube channels, that have big websites with a lot of traffic on it, that have a lot of success that we can see from the outside. And we think that's the way to do it. So we try to emulate what we see, which is a massive mistake, because we don't see what caused people to get to that point. We don't see all of the building up phase. And we think that just because they're successful on the outside, that their business is necessarily healthy from the inside, or they as a person are healthy. So we got to be really careful by just looking at what we see and go, ooh, I want that. Because if we say, I want that, then we're saying, I want somebody else's version of success. And if their version of life isn't exactly like our version of life, then their recipe for success won't be the same as our recipe for success. Now, I'm not saying don't pay attention to what other people are doing. Absolutely. But don't just blindly follow their strategies, especially if you don't really know exactly who they are and what they have and how they're living their life and what exactly is behind the scenes and that it matches you. So what we have in our society, I believe, is what I call an addiction to addition. That's the first bullet on page 2. We are addicted to addition. The reason we're addicted to addition is because we think in order for us to succeed, we need to follow somebody else's game plan, right? Bridget, I know this is your jam right here. We need to follow somebody else's recipe, right? Because who I am is not good enough, so I need to become another version, or I need to become like somebody else. I need to add something to my deficiencies in order to fix my inadequacies, in order to be able to succeed. That's the message that keeps getting perpetuated, and it increases most of our limiting belief of not being good enough. So this idea that we need to add something to ourselves before we can be successful is disempowering, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work because we're following somebody else's recipe and hoping to be fulfilled by somebody else's value system or somebody else's desires or somebody else's life circumstances when they generally don't match ours. And most of what we see in the successful, visible companies, especially in the coaching world, are vendors to the industry. They are marketers. They're generally people, and I'm not painting everybody with the whole brush, and I'm also not saying these people are bad. I'm just saying, let's look at what's happening here. Like in the coaching industry specifically, a lot of coaches, I would say the most successful, visible coaches are vendors to the industry, meaning they're teaching coaches how to be better at coaching, or they're teaching coaches how to make money, or a lot of the vendors are teaching coaches how to do well on Instagram, or how to do well on YouTube, or how to do well in some kind of platform, some kind of tool, which means they are vendors to the industry. They're not people that are just selling coaching. Again, there's nothing wrong with that, unless you are somebody who wants to sell coaching and you're following a vendor's recipe. That's where the disconnect is. So I'm not saying that path is wrong, that those people are bad or anything like that. I'm just saying that's only one path. There is another path. And what most people don't realize is that this second path actually exists, because all we see is this other path. We see that if you increase your YouTube channel, or if you increase your Instagram following, or if you increase your Facebook following, if you do these Facebook ads, then it'll all work just like it worked for me. But you're on Facebook running Facebook ads, teaching people on Facebook how to increase their Facebook ads. That's not what I'm doing. So I can't follow that recipe and hope to get the exact same results. So what we need is we need to make sure that what we're getting is aligned with who we truly are. To finish that second bullet, if you're not a marketer or a vendor, their recipes won't necessarily work for you because the product is different. If you're selling hot dogs in a hot dog stand and you try to figure out how to build your hot dog business, and you follow a recipe from somebody who sells hospital beds to hospitals, just because they have created a multi-million-dollar business selling hospital beds doesn't mean it's going to transfer to selling hot dogs, even though the first two letters are the same, right? So that's what we have to pay attention to, that if there's any kind of difference in the recipe, then the whole thing might not work. Again, there are ingredients in all of that that I think are powerful, and we can pull from that, but we just can't blindly follow these recipes and think that they're going to work for us. I think this is the last thing I'm going to say before I get into some of these strategies, is most of the products that are being sold to the coaching industry are appealing to the coach's ego. That's the last bullet on page 2. Most of the programs are being sold to our ego's desires. If you look at pretty much all the ads, they are how to have a great lifestyle, how to make more money, how to sell high ticket programs, how to make a lot more money with less clients. Again, that's not bad, but that's one desire. That desire is about personal gain. So they're selling to my desire to have a better lifestyle as a coach. They're selling to my desire to make more money as a coach. They're selling to my desire to have more free time, or whatever it is that my ego desires. That's one driver. There's another driver that many people, myself included, and probably most of you, if you're still here, most of you are not driven only by those desires. Now, there's nothing wrong with wanting money. There's nothing wrong with wanting a lifestyle. There's nothing wrong with what our ego wants. This is not an either or. But most of us are more driven by service. Because remember, why did we get into this industry? To give people an experience that we experienced. We didn't say, you know what, I want a better lifestyle for myself, so I'm going to pick the coaching industry. That's not what our base desire is. So that can't be what our marketing strategy is driven by. So my experience is people that are driven more by service, contribution, and just giving people an experience that they've experienced are going to kind of fall flat when it comes to a strategy driven by ego. So I want to highlight these. There are two different paths, and these paths are different because they're literally different games. So the rules of this path over here that most people are following are different than the rules of this path over here, because at the core, we're starting from a totally different place. So let's get into page 3 of the handout. The 3 main phases of a coaching business. The 3 main phases are, going to move to the chalkboard now. How's this landing with you guys? I'm not paying attention to any of the chat right now, but I'll get into it in a second. And if you have any questions about anything I'm saying, disagreements, wonder how it applies to something else, then please let me know. So there are 3 main phases to building a coaching business. Phase number 1 is to get valuable. Phase number 2 is to get visible. And phase number 3 is to get valued. Now let me explain to you what I mean by these. I'm going to go in reverse order. Valued is making money. This is sales. How to sell a coaching program, people giving you money, hiring you as a coach, that's you being valued by somebody enough to give you money. Visible is where you create some kind of a platform, you create visibility, you do articles or videos or whatever you do to share your content with the world. That's you being visible. So that's basically marketing. I'll just put mark. That's marketing. And then number 1 up here, valuable, this is you. This is the product. In traditional business, one of the things they say is the first order of your first intention is to find a minimally viable product. We call it the MVP. What's a product that's going to be valuable for the consumer? And then from there, we can look at how do we market it and how do we sell it and so forth. But if you don't have a product that's valuable to people, you can't build a business around it, right? And this is you as the coach. This is us. We are the product. Now, if you take a look at pretty much all marketing strategies and courses and focuses, most of them are focused on 2 and 3. It's about how to get more visible on YouTube or Instagram, or how to build a better website or whatever. That's visibility. Or how to get high ticket clients, how to sell, that's getting valued. But you can't jump over number 1. This is sequential. You cannot jump over your value and then just prematurely get visible and try to sell. And this is where all of our fears live. This is where our uncertainties live. In this world of coaching, this is the most critical piece, because that's what's going to weather the storm. And this is where your value actually comes from, is inside of you. This is where you have the roots, right? If you take a look at I love looking at my office here. We got a bunch of trees planted all around me. And I love thinking about the tree in terms of strength, because a tree has strength in a different way than a building has strength. So if there was going to be, 100-mile-an-hour hurricane come through here, I don't want to be in this building right here where I am. I'm on the 2nd floor. Chances are we'll get knocked over. But that tree will probably be standing. And the reason trees can withstand so much turbulence in high winds and high weather is because they're rooted so deeply and they're flexible above the ground. So if we have deep foundational roots and surface flexibility, another way to put it that I love to say it is high intention, low attachment. If we've got flexibility with foundation, I've never put those two together. That's the key. Flexibility with foundation. But what most people are doing is they're getting rigid above the surface when it comes to marketing. They're getting rigid with the rules. Just tell me the rule. Tell me what to say on social media. Tell me how to do my ads so that I can just succeed already. And we're like, sweetheart, you don't have roots. I don't even know who you are. I don't know what kind of tree we're marketing here. So how can I tell somebody that this thing is valuable when I don't know what this thing is? So this is the biggest mistake that most people make. Now, a lot of people don't want to do this work because they either discount their value or they're afraid of looking in the mirror. They're afraid of looking at themselves. So it feels really uncomfortable to do this work. But those people that don't do this work, those people that don't get rooted foundational value will not last. That's my prediction for the future. People that don't have rooted value are not going to last as we progress in this marketing world, because the climate is too crazy, it's too turbulent, and you can't have trust without that rooted value. So the main ingredient, this is the next bullet here, in the recipe of certainty is found in your roots. It's found in your humanity. It's found in your past. I recently heard a very famous person in the industry say, you have no value in your past. And it was, to me, the way I view the world, it was such a ridiculous statement because I believe the exact opposite. I believe all of our value in leadership is from the past. That's where our roots are. Now, the reason that this person said there's no value in your past is because he was selling future-based, let me give you the skills to be valuable. And without these skills, and this was directly in the message, without these skills, you're not valuable. Okay, so if anybody buys that, then I have to buy the skills, right? Addiction to addition. Now, I believe the exact opposite. I believe your value comes from the roots. And that next bullet here is you must be certain that I've used this word that goes in the blank here. You must be certain that you have value to share with others, which isn't found in your skills or accomplishments. It's not in your accolades. It's not in what you've accomplished. It's not in the letters behind your name, but rather in the teachable lessons learned through adversity. Those last few sentences, or those last few words, are really important to understand. The lessons learned through adversity. If you haven't gone through adversity, I don't trust you. If you don't know how to fly out of a hurricane, I don't want to buckle up in your plane. If you don't know how to guide the ship out of really rough waters, I'm not getting in your boat. I want to know that you've gone through adversity and you've learned the lessons that could then shorten my learning curve, that could then give me support in dealing with the things that you've already learned how to deal with. Now, the reason that's so important is because most of us want to hide the fact that we have any adversity in our past. We think that if we tell people that we've been addicted to things, or that we've had failed marriages, or that we've had bankruptcy, like my story, that people will go, oh, somebody with bankruptcy or somebody that's on their second or third marriage, we think that that's going to cause us to lose credibility, when in fact, in today's world, it causes us to gain credibility as long as we've learned lessons from it, because it's the lessons that provide the value for other people. So those last four words are really critical to understand. I'm not going to break it down and go as deep as we could in this conversation, but lessons learned, which means you've got to be on the path. You got to be learning that you're willing to share with other people through adversity. So nowadays, your adversity from your past is actually going to give you trust with other people. 15 years ago, it wasn't like that. And I think that's because people weren't taken advantage of yet in mass proportions on the internet yet. So they hadn't been exposed to all of these disappointments and all the stuff that I've been talking about. So if we show us, or we show them our humanity, they will actually trust us more than if we try to pretend to be perfect. Nowadays, perfection is suspicious. The worst thing you can do is pretend to be perfect, because people are like, ain't no way in hell anybody's perfect anymore. And even if they buy the fact that you're perfect, they don't think they're perfect. So they're not going to see any relationship in you if you're perfect and you're speaking to a bunch of imperfect humans. So we have to understand that that's where our value lies nowadays. It's in our humanity. It's in our imperfections. It's in the bumps and the bruises and the stretch marks. As long as we pull the lessons out and we have something to share with people. So I'm going to start wrapping up here. In this mini course, I'm not going to talk about visibility and value because that's out of order. In this mini course, I'm going to dive into valuable because that's where the foundation lies. And the people that do this work, once they get to visible and once they get to valued and once they learn some of the strategies for a lot of the platforms or marketing techniques, then they'll actually work and they'll go faster if the foundational work is done. Now, the foundational work doesn't have to take a long time. The foundational work doesn't have to be emotional. It doesn't have to be uncomfortable. It doesn't have to be painful. If it is for you, okay, fine. But there's no way around the fact that we have to find the value in the product that we can give to other people. So what I'm going to dive into is valuable. And the first place we're going to go is certainty. People need to feel your certainty. Nobody's going to trust you with their life if they don't feel you have certainty with your life. That doesn't mean that you have to have all of your problems solved, because if that was the case, every single one of us would have to give back our coaching card, including myself. I'd be the first in line. We don't have to have all of our issues handled. We don't have to have all of our goals accomplished in order to be a leader. We just have to be able to help somebody else. One of my favorite concepts is, to a third grader, a fourth grader is a god. Now, we might think that we haven't achieved all these things that we want to achieve, and so therefore we don't have the permission to be a teacher. There's always somebody behind us. As long as we're a half a step ahead of somebody else, we can be a teacher to that person. So the third graders, while they're learning fourth grade, they can teach second graders or first graders or kindergartners. There's always somebody on that path that we can teach. We have to find our certainty that we can then tap into that will attract other people. So the first area of certainty, there are three of them. The first area of certainty is self. I'll get to the other two in other videos. This one, we're just going to stay right here in self. Your value is in your body. Your value is in your lessons that you've learned from the adversity that you've gone through in the past. And I have a philosophy when it comes to certainty and when it comes to your target market, which I call your seeker. We'll get into all that later. I call it the llama's eye. I have a whole YouTube video on it. If you want to watch it, we'll post the link somewhere else. It's one of my favorite videos because I think it's funny. But, you know, it's basically a bullseye, but, you know, a llama is a more inviting animal than a bull. So I just call it the llama's eye. Here's my philosophy. If you really want magnetic attraction, the best case scenario, the center of this llama's eye when it comes to marketing, is that you teach an earlier version of yourself. What I mean by that is the person you're teaching is an earlier version of yourself, not necessarily a younger version, just earlier on the path that you've already walked. So if you've gone through a divorce and you've learned the lessons of how to recover from a divorce, how to get into the next relationship in a healthy way, how to heal whatever trauma was created in the divorce, or maybe you've learned how to settle a marriage that's going toward divorce. Whatever you've learned in that process, you can look back and teach anybody who's going through the adversity that you've learned the lessons from. And they could be 30 years older than you. They're just earlier on the path from you. So that is that's the ideal scenario. That's not always what I would tell people to do, but that's always where I want to start. What's an earlier version of you? Now, the reason that is because you totally relate to everything that's going on in their head. You've been where they are. So all the stories that you tell, all the emotions that you felt, they'll be like, I feel those too. I'm right there with you. Are you in my head? It's like, no, I'm not in your head, but I walk the same path as you, and we kind of operate similarly as humans. So kind of, I guess. When you can tell stories from an earlier version of yourself to people that are on that earlier path, the resonance that you'll have, the attraction, the alignment, the connection is off the charts. So that is ideal scenario number one. The middle of the llama's eye is teach to an earlier version of yourself the lessons that you learned from the experiences that they are now in. If for whatever reason, that's not the best plan because you don't like teaching those people, or there's not a whole lot of money to be made and this business needs to be viable, or for whatever reason, you don't want to do that, then we can go to the next ring out. Okay, then who's another person that really resonates with that message? And if you choose not to go with them, then you can go to the next ring out. But we got to go in and start with where your value is the highest. Your value, and really what it is, it's like going back into your own past and saying, if you knew what I know now, like imagine you could go back to your 15-year-old self and you could teach your 15-year-old self some of the things that you've learned over the previous years between now and when you were 15, some of the lessons that would support him or her in relationships or money or success or whatever it is that they're struggling with. Imagine if you could take the wisdom that you now have from, the future and put it in that child's head. Imagine how powerful that would be. That's really what we're doing here. We're just putting it in another person's head. That's why this is so powerful. Not everybody should do this, but everybody should start there and go there unless there's a reason not to. And most people don't do this. So let me get to the home play assignments here. We're going to stop there with all the content. The home play assignments are to tap into this. The home play assignments are to tap into yourself and your certainty, and let's find some of this value. So the first assignment is come up with 3 to 5 things that you've experienced in your past that taught you some major life lessons. They could be positive or they could be negative, or they could be, kind of neutral on the emotional scale. But just write down, like it could be divorce. It could be my parents got divorced. For me, I was hit by a car when I was 13 years old and nearly died. I also went to the Little League World Series 3 times in my life. So I could write Little League World Series. I could write a bicycle accident, age of 13. I could write parents divorced at 18. I got married when I was 25. Whatever things you've experienced in your life, and you can do more than 5 if you want. But I want you to identify what are the most significant experiences that you've had in your life that taught you major life lessons. And then number 2, what are those lessons? What did you learn? So for me, my bicycle accident taught me that we're not promised our very next breath. At any moment in time, we could be wiped away without warning, without preparation. And it caused me to be grateful for the present moment. It caused me to start looking at life differently. It caused me to fear regret. It caused me to fear the regret of not living while I was alive. That's what that bicycle accident caused me or taught me. And that's one of the things that I started my business teaching, is those lessons that I learned from that bicycle accident. And then number 3 is, if you could just, and I know this is a tough question for a lot of people to answer, but if you could just pick one thing that you'll teach for the rest of your life, what would it be? That doesn't necessarily mean that you will. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's the best business strategy. But this is a heart question. If you could only teach one thing, sing one song for the rest of your career, what would that one thing be? So again, I'm not telling you that whatever you circle or underline is the thing that you'll be tied to necessarily. This is just a question. And then we'll take that question and we'll continue on with the other levels of certainty, the other Llama's Eye kind of principles, and get into more philosophies and strategies as this course progresses. So that's all I have from a content standpoint. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm going to dive into the chat section here. And if you're listening to this on replay, then go ahead and you can still put your comments in or ask your questions. Bridget earlier said, your roots create your fruits. I love that. Exactly. She's like, what? Right. That's what I said. Yeah. Your past has no value. Then what the hell have I been living for? Right? What value do I have if I can't find something to share with other people from my past? I mean, it was just such a demeaning comment. It was crazy. Michelle posted the video in here of the Llama's Eye video, or posted a link for the Llama's Eye video. Cool. So if there's anything that I didn't address, maybe you commented and you want me to address, then let me know. If there's something you want to type in now and you want to get my thoughts on now, let me know. Otherwise, you can respond to any of the emails or post this video. Wherever this video is, we'll probably have some kind of comment section on the page, and you can post it on there. And please, what I'd love to know is, how did this land for you? Is there anything in particular that really stood out? Any concept, any phrase? What questions do you have coming off of this content? And we'll just continue this conversation. So hopefully this is something lands with you. And the way out is in. If you want to break through something, everything you need, especially in this industry, is inside of you. It's not about getting something external to fix your deficiencies. It's about finding the value that you have inside and getting rooted in that value, and then going and changing people's lives with that exact information. So with that, everyone, have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you in class number 2. Take care.